Hi, I'm Steve Koski, host of Cruisin with Papa Steve, where we explore California's East Bay on my Honda Rebel 1100. Let's go cruisin'. Some of you might be thinking about buying Honda's new, highly acclaimed Rebel 1100. In this video, I share my experiences with my Honda Rebel 1100 DCT after riding it for the first 1,100 miles. I ordered my Rebel 1100 in December 2020 and took delivery in March 2021. I'm a newcomer to riding motorcycles. The Rebel 1100 is the second motorcycle I've owned. I bought my first motorcycle when I was 71 years old. When I was younger, I rode other people's bikes. In high school, I rode a friend's scooter. On a couple of other occasions, I rode 50cc trail bikes. My first wife had a scooter that I don't remember ever having ridden. I'm sure I must have on occasion. My youngest brother let me ride his four-cylinder Yamaha 1100 from Franklin, Nebraska to Red Cloud, Nebraska. I was in my 40s at the time. The ride was 23 miles along one of the state's blue highways, a two-lane asphalt country road through farm country bordered by wheat fields and grazing cattle. That motorcycle was so smooth I had no sensation of speed. I felt like I could have just stepped off the bike and run along beside it. Midway through the ride, I looked down at the speedometer. I was zipping along at 90 miles an hour. 30-some years later, I bought my first motorcycle. The bike was a Japanese mid-size legacy cruiser. I bought a glistening white and chrome 2007 Suzuki Boulevard S50. Many of the Suzukis in the Boulevard line are overweight cruisers, but the model I bought could almost be considered a sport cruiser. The bike had a 29-inch seat height that made it easy to flat foot when I braked to a stop. It was assembled around a cruiser-style frame that looked to be closer to a factory bobber, and it weighed just a little over 400 pounds. The 40 to 50 horsepower V-twin engine gave the bike lots of punch. The S50 was electronically low-tech compared to many of today's Japanese and European motorcycles, but it had some features I really liked. It was water-cooled. It had a shaft drive instead of a chain or belt. The front brake was a hydraulically activated disc, and the clutch was hydraulic. All were thoughtful features for an 800cc motorcycle. I happily paid $2,900 for my Suzuki. But I couldn't ride it immediately. I didn't have a California motorcycle license yet. Not to worry, I told myself, because I was enrolled in California's $350 motorcycle safety class. At the end of the 15-hour class, I would be certified to ride. I would only need to take the written motorcycle test at my local DMV. Then, I would be able to ride my Suzuki until my butt fell asleep. The class didn't go as planned. Toward the end of the last day, I failed the slow-speed slalom test because, while zigzagging around the orange cones marking the mandated course, I put my foot down on the tarmac to keep the motorcycle from falling over. Failing part of the riding test meant I had to wait for an opening in a future class to repeat the test and pay $120 more for the do-over. 6 weeks later, finally, I was able to join another class. On the second try, I kept my feet off the tarmac and passed the slow-speed slalom test. Eagerly, I sought an appointment at the DMV to take the written test. The next available appointment was an exasperating 2 months away. Meanwhile, my gleaming white and chrome Suzuki Boulevard languished undisturbed in my garage. When the day for my appointment finally came, I breezed through the written part of my test. I wasted little time driving home to try out my new, used motorcycle. My first few rides were awkward and terrifying. Who knew cars clustered around you on a 4-lane arterial could be so intimidating? A week later, I noticed the engine temperature light would come on like clockwork after riding the Suzuki for 10 minutes. My motorcycle mechanic at BMG Racing told me he had only seen a motorcycle water pump with a broken impeller before, when the bike had been left outside in sub-zero weather. The East Bay never freezes, but the Suzuki had a Michigan motorcycle dealer license plate bracket on it when I bought it. The jerk who sold me the bike may not have known the water pump was broken, but he certainly knew the warning light would come on after the engine warmed up. Likewise, he must have known the triple tree steering bearing was rusted out. As a newbie, I never would have caught the bearing problem if my mechanic hadn't warned me how unsafe the motorcycle was. Then the carbureted engine needed to be tuned. I decided to dyno tune it. In for a dime, in for $1. The front pads were worn. I fixed it myself with a new rotor and pads, and the tires needed to be replaced. I put a set of Michelins on. I wanted to learn how to do much of the mechanical maintenance on the Suzuki myself. When I was younger, I learned how to work on my own cars. I rebuilt the engines in an MGA, a Triumph TR4A, a Volvo P1800, and a Volvo 144. I'm not an unusually big man. Even so, I hadn't counted on the Suzuki having places to fix where my hands seemed too big to go. I actually learned to do a lot of mechanical work myself on the Suzuki. I upgraded the headlight to an LED. I installed new throttle cables. I changed out the gas line twice because every time I removed the tank to work on the engine, the tank end of the gas line seemed to split. I would fix it by cutting off the leaking part. The hose got shorter and shorter until it was too short to slide back onto the tank's shut-off valve. I never mastered synchronizing the twin carbs myself, even though when I was in college, I synced the twin SUs, fueling my MGA and my Triumph TR4 myself. I spent $150 for a professional-grade vacuum synchronizer to tune the Suzuki, but I never could get the carbs synced right. I don't feel too bad though. The local Suzuki dealership told me they don't work on S50s anymore because they had trouble syncing the carbs. My independent mechanic charged me $175 every time I messed up and had to ask him to sync and balance the carbs for me. The bike had a custom seat when I bought it. The stitching started to rip. I had a local upholsterer put new vinyl on it. He did a great job for $150. But the custom seat had been uncomfortable when I bought the bike. Unfortunately, the new upholstery didn't make it sit any better. So I found a used stock seat on eBay for $130 and turned the bike's saddle back to original. The previous owner had drilled out the twin slant-cut Cobra mufflers because he thought the timing chains driving the V-twin's double overhead cam made the engine sound like a washing machine. The drilled out exhaust was too loud. I replaced the old Cobras with a new pair, $400 and change. They were just as loud. I replaced the flimsy handlebar mount windshield the bike came with. I put on an excellent Memphis Slim windshield, $330. By the time I sold the Suzuki, I'm guessing that my $2,900 Boulevard S50 had cost me an additional $3,000 in repairs and improvements. I could have bought a very nice new motorcycle for the same $6,900 if I hadn't been so smitten by my glistening white and chrome 2007 Suzuki Boulevard S50. The Suzuki was fun to ride though. It was nimble and quick. Its only two annoying issues were that it was too easy to miss a gear shifting from first to second, and the engine was too buzzy at highway speed. By now, viewers, you must be wondering if I am ever going to tell you about my Rebel 1100. Well, your patience has paid off. My Suzuki established that this septuagenarian codger loves to ride, but I needed a better bike. So when Honda introduced the Rebel 1100 at the end of 2020, I was ready to upgrade. I've ridden my new Honda for more than 1,100 miles now. Every time I ride the Rebel 1100 DCT, I want to ride it some more. Here are my reasons why. The motorcycle looks beefy, but it feels lighter than its 500 pounds. The bike's handling is nimble and responsive. The torquey 82 horsepower parallel twin is muscular and well behaved. I always wanted cruise control on my Suzuki. It comes standard on the Rebel 1100. I am delighted with the double clutch automatic transmission. The DCT shifts smoothly and confidently. From a standing start, the bike quickly accelerates to 40 miles per hour, shifting through the gears without drawing attention to itself until the transmission settles into 6th gear. However, other YouTube reviewers have commented about an annoying clunk during shifts in the lower gear ranges. The clunk doesn't bother me nearly as much as my Suzuki missing the shift to 2nd gear entirely. No missed gears. No clutch for my arthritic left hand to pull. I like coasting up to a stoplight and taking my hands off the grips to relax without worrying about having to find neutral. Riding a motorcycle with an automatic transmission should not be confused with the experience of riding one with a manual transmission. Just cruising around, the DCT is content to shift through the gears in the 2,000 to 2,500 RPM range. Riders with the manual transmission version of the Rebel 1100 might tend to wrap the engine up toward 4,000 RPMs before shifting. When I switch from auto to manual mode, 4,000 RPMs is where I tend to shift. In auto mode, shifting range depends on the DCT setting you choose. DCT at 100% causes the transmission to shift at higher RPMs. DCT at 25% shifts the transmission at lower RPMs. I sometimes notice a speed surge when the DCT upshifts, as if the bike doesn't throttle back to accommodate the higher gear. Honda may need to further refine the shift algorithm. The digital instrument cluster is a wonder of modern electronics. It's attractive and easy to read. It's loaded with information. You can easily read the large speedometer and transmission gear indicators. The tachometer is small, but usable. Having a gas gauge is a luxury. I really appreciate the driving range indicator. I like having a clock and air temperature indicators. I like having my choice of 4 riding modes. I set my own engine map. I've taken to selecting user mode with power set to 100%, torque set to 25%, engine braking set to 75%, and DCT set to 50%. I realize, strictly speaking, the settings are not percentages. I'm calling them percentages to make them easier to describe. I like the Bauhaus school industrial look of the exposed frame and the blacked out styling. My color choice, Bordeaux Red Metallic, is stunning. LED lights all around speak to the Rebel 1100's commitment to modern electronics. Here are the things I would change about the Honda Rebel 1100 DCT after riding my first 1,100 miles. I would like a more upright seating position. 2-inch risers on the handlebars would help. Honda should offer a kit. The bike would look terrific with buckhorn bars. It would be a marketing coup if Honda would add buckhorns as an option. The seat could be more comfortable. The stock saddle is good for about an hour and a half before butt fatigue makes you want to get off the motorcycle. Don't plan long trips. I last about 50 miles. I wish the motorcycle had a shaft drive instead of a chain. Why make owners clean and lubricate a chain every 600 miles? The cost of service for the first 600-mile checkup is too high. I paid $280. The handlebar grips need to be a larger diameter. I have mild arthritis in my hands. The small grips aggravate it. I put foam grip covers over the originals that increase the diameter. The throttle is a bit twitchy. The combination of a light bike and a torquey engine leads small changes in the throttle to creating a herky-jerky ride. Rain mode helps, but rain mode sucks the fun out of the bike. I compromised with my own user settings. I don't like the clunky look of the muffler. The bike would have been stunning with a pair of twin pipes coming low off the right side of the engine. The engine exhaust has an appealing bass note, but the sound is over-dampened. Aftermarket pipes correct this. The two major brands I've seen, Vance and Hines and Two Brothers, are both upswept mufflers that look more appropriate on a sports or off-road bike. The Rebel 1100 is a cruiser. The pipes should go straight back to match the cruiser design of the bike. I have other observations to share. The DCT model is really a 6-speed automatic transmission with rider assist. The manual setting on the transmission is not a precise match for an actual manual transmission. 80% of the time, I'm content to set the transmission to automatic and forget it. However, sometimes the transmission doesn't want to automatically upshift when I think it should. That's why the good Lord thought to provide paddle shifters on the left grip. A flick of the upshift paddle instantly forces the transmission out of its stubborn attachment to the awkward gear. I don't push the bike very hard when I'm cruising, so I noticed the seamless downshifting related to the motorcycle's speed and power demands. But I found myself wondering whether the bike had a passing gear protocol for heavy acceleration. I found a stretch of 2-lane blacktop that was fairly straight, but not heavily traveled. I sped the bike up to 40 miles per hour and checked to see that the DCT had shifted into 6th gear. Then I cranked the bike to full throttle. The DCT instantly dropped the transmission into 3rd gear, and the bike shot out of a cannon with me clinging to the grips by my white arthritic knuckles. For pleasure cruising, though, the engine has plenty of torque at lower revs to provide adequate acceleration even in the higher gears. One YouTube vlogger I watched complained that the bike was sluggish when she cranked the throttle coming out of a turn. I haven't noticed that, perhaps because I ride my Rebel 1100 like it was a cruiser and not like a sport bike. It's possible the DCT mode didn't recognize the need to downshift at that speed and power. The vlogger could have downshifted with the paddle shifter. I bet her bike wouldn't have been sluggish then. That's it for my first 1,100 miles on my Honda Rebel 1100. I hope those of you thinking about buying the Rebel 1100 find my observations and experiences helpful. This is Steve Koski, host of Cruising with Papa Steve. I hope you enjoyed this video. You can tell me if you did by clicking the like button below. Also, I would be delighted if you would subscribe to Cruisin' with Papa Steve. If you don't, I'll be just another codger talking to himself on the internet. See you on the road.